We're ready to get ready. Mr. you want to chair for?
Yes, we'll move forward with. Well, I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll note that this is the June 17th Capitol Quarter Joint Powers Authority Board of Directors, and we have a full agenda, and we have a quorum. You can download the agenda and presentation materials at www.capitolquarter.org/ccjpa-board. All speakers are requested to announce their name as they begin to speak. For public participants who joined in person, if you would like to provide public comments, please complete a request to address the board form available at the entrance to the boardroom and hand it to the secretary for the item to be considered by the board. For public participants who joined by telephone, your microphones are automatically muted. If you wish to speak on an agenda item, please dial *9 to virtually raise your hand when public comment is announced. When it's your turn to speak, you may need to dial *6 to accept the unmute request. For public participants who joined via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak. Board members and staff who joined via Zoom, please mute your microphones whenever you are not speaking to avoid background noise. If you wish to make a general public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you will be given an opportunity under item 7. However, if you have a comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will take those comments after staff presentation and prior to the board discussion. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person per item. Comments which have been received via email by 3 p.m. on Tuesday have been provided to the board and will be included as a permanent part of the meeting record. Board members, in order to reduce confusion throughout the meeting, when it's time for the director's remarks, I will call on the board member for comments. We do expect Chair Houdesheld to arrive later. He will take over, and I will speak last, and in the interest of time, I will provide an opportunity for equal participation. Please try to keep your comments concise. This concludes the report of the chair. Thank you very much. District Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Director Byrd, Director Brewer, Director Broadway, Director Chapman, Director Dickinson.
Here.
Director Foley.
Present.
Director Frericks.
Here.
Director Albert Hernandez. Director Jade.
Here.
Director Lee. Director Rayburn.
Here.
Director Ridd.
Here.
Director Sell.
Here.
Director Wright.
Here.
Vice Chair Hernandez. Chair Houdesheld. Director Maples.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item is the consent calendar. Do we? Oh, we do. Could I start with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we've gone through the report of the chair, and we'll turn to the consent calendar. Are there any staff comments on the consent calendar items?
We do not have any changes to the consent items.
Do we have any public comments on the consent calendar?
There are no public comments.
Do I have any members of the board, in person or online, with comments on the consent calendar?
Jane moves approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Director Jane moves approval, and Director Rinn seconded. District Secretary, would you please call for the vote?
Okay, certainly. Director Byrd, Director Brewer, Director Broadway, Director Chapman, Director Dickinson,
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Frericks,
Aye.
Director Alber Hernandez, Director Jane,
Yes.
Director Lee, Director Rayburn,
Yay.
Director Rinn,
Yes.
Director Sell,
Yes.
Director Wright,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hernandez, Chair Haldeshell, and Director Maples.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you very much. We're moving right along. We move to the action and discussion items. We're going to have an item on authorizing the agreements with the California High-Speed Rail Authority for National Environmental Policy Act Lead Agency Services for the Sacramento to Roseville Third Track and the South Bay Connect projects.
Thank you very much. Rob Paget, Managing Director. So for this first item, I'm going to have Jim Allison, our Senior Manager of Planning, present what I think is a really useful and helpful way to move forward on a couple of our big projects where we do expect and anticipate federal funding for delivery. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Hello, thank you. This is Jim Allison, Senior Manager of Planning for the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. If we can go to the next slide, I'll start the presentation. So as it was mentioned, we have these two major projects, Sacramento to Roseville Third Track and South Bay Connect. These are projects where we completely believe we will need federal funding. And once you need federal funding, you need to complete the NEPA process. We have not fallen through or had federal funding on both of these projects for quite some time, and it was a bit ambiguous as to when and how we were going to get to the starting gate to start NEPA. Once NEPA starts, you can't really be doing any other activities you can't be designing the project in parallel. You need to let that process play out and design according to what you discover through the findings of it. So getting through NEPA was always kind of this cloudy period on when was it going to start. So the methods that we're identifying today are a way to start that process with more certainty rather than letting some of the other options play themselves out. So you'll see at the end of the meeting, we are recommending that you would accept our agreement with the California High-Speed Rail Authority, who has authority to process NEPA, and we'll go through that. So next slide. So as mentioned, we do need NEPA, we anticipate, for both these projects to come to be pulled off. So we have an opportunity to get that delegated in this unique circumstance. And that circumstance mainly has to do with being connected to the California high-speed rail system in some way, shape, or form. And we have that opportunity certainly at San Jose Diridon, because we connect there with where they're going to operate, but also in Sacramento. So next slide. So NEPA assignment has been around for a while, since about 2005. It started with in the highway side of things, but it's gradually expanded to include rail and transit as different federal funding bills were passed and reauthorized. So that has continued all the way right through the IIJA, and that authority has been presented to California High-Speed Rail Authority. On the next slide, please. So the NEPA assignment is assigned to California High-Speed Rail Authority. Obviously, they've done NEPA for their project, and they have very experienced staff sitting there waiting to assist other agencies throughout California in this endeavor. So they have a NEPA assignment with FRA through 2034, and they also can shepherd all the processes that are related to that. FRA does retain tribal coordination, air quality, general conformity determination, but that's even that would be facilitated, and FRA would be consulted for that. So the review is streamlined through the authority should we agree to work with them, and then they can become the federal lead agency for that, as long as we meet all the criteria. Next slide, please. We anticipate at these 4 levels of environmental clearance for NEPA, we anticipate both these projects would fit under the environmental assessment level. We had started previously down the NEPA path with Sacramento to Roseville third track project, but we're not able to complete it because of the funding situations we were in. But we were doing an EA at that time. So we expect to be back at that level for that. And then the South Bay Connect project, it does not have as many of the complexities as even Sac to Roseville. So we feel pretty assured that the EA would be the right level. And the estimated review cost for the assistance is roughly around $900,000. So we're making the point in our action today that we do have funding authority to actually go up to $1 million for each one of those projects. Next slide, please. Just to give you some reassurance about this actually does work. There's several projects around California that have utilized this with California High-Speed Rail Authority. The Stockton Diamond was completed as an EA in 2023, probably the first one. And then Link Union Station, these are big projects, was completed in 2026. And there's other projects with the High Desert Corridor and San Diego Low San rail realignment that are underway right now under this very same process. So we're an esteemed company when we would join up for this. So next slide. So the final action here is really for these 2 projects to have the executive director be designated to enter into the agreement and also to have sufficient funding authority to do that, even though these projects have been authorized to take other funding actions. So I think we're well covered in either way to proceed with these projects, and I'm available for any questions should you have them.
And if I could add just one comment here to the back end of this, because we've been talking about how to federalize these projects for some time. I think you remember we've talked in previous board meetings about the corridor identification program, which is a federal program, which would federalize really all of our projects that are part of that process. That process is just not moving quickly. It is seemingly still a part of the FRA program, and we are continuing to work with FRA on that. But the reality is it's moving slow, and we want to take an opportunity here to federalize the project so that we can move forward and be ready when discretionary programs are available in the future to move on either of these projects, just to give you a little bit more context. But thanks, Jim, for the presentation.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Director Paget. This is a very exciting project to bring these 2 projects into the fold with the California High-Speed Rail. This is an action item that would propose to spend about $900,000 per project for each if they qualified for the environmental assessment only. Before we go to director's comments, let's see if we have any comments from the public.
We do have one request to address the board from Roland. Roland, please go ahead.
Please proceed, Roland. Welcome.
Yes, good morning, and thank you, Chair. So I understand what we're doing here. We're trying to accelerate environmental clearance, and it's perfect. The only red flag I want to bring to your attention is that any kind of nexus with California high-speed rail is going to be problematic down the road once we go back to Washington asking for funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
That was the last comment online.
I see Director Jane has his hand up.
Yeah, I understand, staff did a lot of work on this, and I just am trying to understand this. If we don't use high-speed rail to help us with this NEPA process, what are our alternatives? And, there were 4 projects outlined that used high-speed rail to get their EAs or their EIRs. Were those on time and on budget? I don't know what the capacity is within high-speed rail to be able to do this work for us.
Rob Paget, I'm going to start and then let Jim fill in all the blanks. So the way to think about this, and there's a lot more experience on the highway side of the world, is that federal agencies have a responsibility to review and participate and sponsor environmental clearance for projects. That through FRA is painfully slow. Through Federal Highway Administration on the highway side, painfully slow. So as an innovative way to move stuff forward, the idea was to delegate that responsibility to the state level. The state has to still follow the law. They're still required to do the full review under the NEPA Act. It has worked on the highway side. It has been effective. And they are looking for other opportunities to delegate that responsibility to a state level agency. In this case, rail is an opportunity. My perspective on it, and it's a very good question, is what do we do if we don't move forward with this? We would continue to wait on this and most likely federalize our projects through the quarter ID process, should that happen, or try to figure out a way to pull some federal dollars into one of these projects. In the absence of federal dollars, FRA is not willing to support us on moving through NEPA. And the problem with that is if we go out and apply for funds again in the future, we will have the same problem we had the last time we applied for funds, which is we have to essentially wait for 2 years while we complete NEPA. So what we're saying is, let's get NEPA done, check that box, follow all the rules, and then be ready at the back end of that with more confidence in the cost of the project to pull together these various discretionary sources so that we can have a credible ask for implementation of these projects. I hope that answers your question. Jim is the expert, so maybe if there's anything I missed, Jim, please fill in.
I think, so Jim Allison here, just a few small nuances there. Rob talked about the Corridor ID program. So we've been working with the state. We put in all our information to get the Corridor ID process started. That's been on, somewhere at the FRA administration level for 6-7 months at this point in time. And even if it was signed tomorrow, there would still be about a year or so before that whole process gets going. If we get this going this way, we can at least start our NEPA path now. And every year or month that we're waiting, we're facing inflationary costs and uncertainty about that. So as Rob said, we want to get going with certainty on this. The only other way would be to wait for that process to play out. And even once you're in the process, we have to get from step 2 to step 3. So that's more time. So in Corridor ID, yes. In the other option would be to actually get a federal award, which takes us applying for something, and getting awarded, and then successfully executing the award. And we came close on Sac to Roseville on doing that, but then by the time the award was made, the cost of the project had doubled. And I think Rob made a good decision. We can't sign a document that you will deliver a project with only half the funding you needed. So this is really about getting certainty and avoiding the waiting game. And once we get done with NEPA, then everything from that point on does not have that, question around it. How long will things take?
Thank you for your question, Director Jane. And Director Dickinson, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. I am pleased to see the staff bring this to the board, and if it's their judgment after looking at all the alternatives that this is the best route to go and offers the opportunity to get the NEPA work done faster than any other alternative, then I'm very, very supportive of that, particularly for the Sacramento-Roseville project that we have wanted to see realized for more than 15 years now. But I do have one question, and that is, I don't know so much about the South Bay Connect status, but I thought that CEQA work had been done on the Sacramento to Roseville section some time ago. And so the first question is that correct? Is my memory correct that there actually has been environmental work completed on that project? And then if that is correct, to what extent can that be applied to the NEPA work in order to shorten the time frame that it would take to do the NEPA assessment?
So you are correct. Actually, both projects have cleared CEQA. We cleared CEQA with South Bay Connect in 2024, and we cleared Sac to Roseville in 2015, and then redid a supplemental EIR in 2023. So CEQA's all done. The good thing about having CEQA done is you're about 90%. It's a copy and paste exercise and some editing, and then you do the last 10%. So it does help with that. The one situation, though, once you get NEPA going, is you do need to do Section 106 compliance, which is cultural assessments and making sure you have complied with all that. So that is related to the NEPA assignment as well. So that part didn't start as much of a formal process. It's a bigger deal when you get the federal dollars in to do that. So I would say that's the 10%. We estimate it's going to take about 2 years. It might be a little quicker than that, but using 2 years as a conservative window and how long it might take.
So I'm sorry, Jim, for the cultural assessment, you think that would take 2 years?
The combined work of the cultural Section 106 work plus the NEPA work could take up to 2 years. That's what I'm going with right now. There's a review by the, sorry.
I understand being conservative, but that seems fairly extreme to me, so.
Yeah, we were looking at 2 years when FRA was starting on the process for the Sac to Roseville project. And so I'm using that as the yardstick. So it should be similar. It could be better. I just don't want to get expectations that it's going to be done in 6 months. Because there's other agencies to consult with, and they have their own processes, and you get in line. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to call on myself and then hand the gavel over to Chair Houdesheld. I believe that the integration that this represents between California High-Speed Rail as well as the Corridor ID project gives us the tools to move these two projects forward and achieve full funding. There's no other option on the table that I can see. And with that, I would like to move approval.
I'll second.
I have a second from Foley and from Dickinson. They were, Mark Foley just indicated, we'll note Director Dickinson made the second since he made comments on this. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Director Broadway.
Yes.
Director Dickinson.
Aye.
Director Foley.
Aye.
Director Frericks.
Aye.
Director Jade.
Yes.
Director Rayburn.
Yay.
Director Ridd.
Yes.
Director Sell.
Yes.
Director Wright.
Aye.
Chair Houdesheld.
Aye.
And Director Maples.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
The motion passes, and I pass the gavel on to Chair Houdesheld. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, former Chair Rayburn, for filling in while I was on my way here. That takes us to item 2, the Caltrans fleet plan. And Rob, is this you or?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce our special guest today. Thank you, Rob Padgett, Managing Director. And we have a special guest today, Kyle Gradinger, who is the chief of the Caltrans Rail Division. As promised, we talked about this at our last meeting. As we've discussed in our previous meetings, under our interagency transfer agreement with the state of California, the state delegated the responsibility to this board to run the service back in 1998. In that transition, the state maintained its responsibility in this agreement to provide us with a fleet and to have the responsibility for the overhaul of service. The day-to-day maintenance responsibilities for equipment still reside with Capital Corridor. Given the critical significance of a reliable fleet and the role of the state in bringing this to bear, we have invited Kyle. The state is working on a fleet plan for the state that lays out exactly how we're going to do this, and wanted to give him an opportunity to come to the board today and give you an opportunity to ask questions to Kyle about plans going forward with our fleet plan. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kyle.
Thank you very much, Rob. Good morning, members of the board. Pleased to be here today. So today I'm going to give a presentation that lays out the Caltrans Intercity Fleet Strategy, which is a 20-year roadmap to help us restore a state of good repair, protect service reliability, and positions the state for the next generation fleet. I'm going to discuss how that fleet strategy ties into the state rail plan vision, address a couple of core questions such as how much fleet is needed for the future, how do we restore and sustain the current equipment that we have, and what is the right time and how do we renew the fleet for the future. We've developed 4 planning horizons, a short, medium, intermediate, and long term. We're going to rework the names. We're actually going to call it an immediate, short, mid, and long term, but just remember 4 planning horizons that we'll talk about today. And I'll provide a closer look at the overhaul phase, which is the next phase in the fleet strategy, specifically looking at our aging locomotives and the bi-level passenger coaches. The fleet strategy is critical right now because we are really in a crunch period, given the aging fleet that we have and the overhaul needs for that fleet. And I look forward to engaging with you all and as well as the other JPAs and receiving your input and having discussions as we work through this strategy together. And I'll reiterate, it's a strategy rather than a plan. Simply, there's a lot of unknowns and it's a very big effort to tackle. And so the strategy is really kind of giving us that north arrow to follow as we go through the next 15 or 20 years. Next slide, please. So before I get started, I'll just give a quick overview of, go back one slide, please. Yeah, of the Caltrans Division of Rail. So we are set up as 3 offices. The Rail Planning and Implementation Office crafts the state rail plan with our partners across the state, and that establishes the long-term vision for rail in California. That office is also responsible for the Corridor Identification and Development Program, which was discussed in the previous item, and that's going to become the new planning and project delivery framework to support the state rail plan in California, regardless of the FRA's involvement. We think that the methods there are solid, and we want to continue to develop those in California. And that office has also recently created a tool called the California Rail Infrastructure System, or CRIS, which will be used to help us support rail project identification, development, prioritization, funding status, and nomination for state and federal grants. It's an exciting tool, and hopefully we'll have chances in the future to describe how that works to you all. And we've been working with the Capital Corridor staff on it. The Office of Assets and Equipment is led by my colleague Olivia Arant, who's here today. And that office has the responsibility for planning, procuring, deploying, and maintaining the state's rail fleet of nearly 200 plus locomotives, coaches, and in the future, train sets. That office also leads a variety of initiatives looking at rail technology, innovation, and development with agencies across California and North America. And then finally, the Rail Operations and Maintenance Office helps to manage the budget for the California Intercity Passenger Rail Program and contracts with Amtrak for the use of Amtrak-owned equipment in Southern California. Okay, so the state rail plan, like I mentioned earlier, is our North Star, and that sets the vision for 2050. And I think the key takeaway for the California State Rail Plan, which was updated in January of last year, is that we really aim to capture the majority of growth in travel in California and take it from highways and shift it to an integrated network of transit and rail. And we aim high. We want to see a passenger miles traveled mode split, nearly 20% of travel in California on trains and buses by 2050. That is a big lift. We're at about 2 to 3% right now, but we think that the rail plan and then component documents like the fleet strategy are big parts in helping us get there. That's the big vision, but in the near term, we need a very clear concept of how to keep service going now and then prepare for growth again in the future. So that's where the fleet strategy comes in. It addresses the equipment needs to support that rail plan vision. As I mentioned earlier, the F-59 locomotives and the bi-level coaches are aging. And even our youngest locomotives, our Chargers, are about to turn 10, going to be teenagers soon. And the new venture fleet is also not far behind, so we have to start thinking about life cycle maintenance there as well. And we're continuing to procure and test new train and zero emission technologies across the state. So the fleet strategy addresses a few core questions. As I mentioned earlier, how much fleet will be needed in the future? How do we restore and sustain the fleet that we have today and keep it in a state of good repair? When's the right time to buy that new fleet of the future? So in California, Caltrans owns about 187 of the vehicles used in the intercity passenger rail services across the Capitol Corridor, the Gold Runner, and the San Joaquin, or the Surfliner. That fleet mixes newer equipment like the Venture and Chargers from Siemens, made right here, or right up the road in Sacramento, with the older equipment, including the California cars and the F-59s, which are around 1990, 2000 vintage. The current challenge is that state of good repair. How do we keep those F-59 locomotives and the California cars going as we approach overhaul decision points? The Chargers are going to need to go into component level overhauls very soon, and we just brought the service back to our pre-COVID service levels. And a part of the teething we all went through when we got back to our new service levels earlier this year was due to equipment constraints. But as we continue to work through that and get more reliability out there, we are really seeing the ridership and the revenue uptick. The last few months have been wonderful, both in the Capitol Corridor and Surfliner as well. So it kind of proves if we can build it, if we can run it, they will come. So the way forward towards renewal in our fleet strategy, we develop a 20-year roadmap out to 2045, focusing on state of good repair, protecting service reliability, and ensuring that we have the right equipment to deliver the planned services across all corridors at the right timeframes. We also have targeted overhauls, which are going to extend the useful life of our aging fleet segments, and that will give us time to plan and execute a next generation equipment procurement throughout the 2030s. None of this happens quickly, so we're being conservative, but also thinking ahead of the ball about what it's going to take time-wise to get to the next fleet. So as I mentioned, we have the four planning horizons, and again, I'm going to refer to the short term as the immediate, the now, and then the short, mid, and long term. The immediate, the now, what we were trying to do was restore the pre-COVID service, which we did. We were able to restore that back between roughly December and early this year. We were doing that by fully deploying the new Venture car fleet. We have now taken delivery of all 49 Venture cars that you see on the Gold Runner service. We've been working with the JPAs to reallocate equipment between Northern California and Southern California on a piecemeal basis to meet the day-to-day needs, also being cognizant of the World Cup and of course, the Olympic needs coming up in 2028. And we signed the lease with Caltrain in February of this year to use 3 of their F-40 locomotives, and then we also have the ability to pull over 13 of their passenger coaches. We are painfully close to getting those F-40 locomotives into service today, and those are going to play a really critical part in giving us the service reliability we need to then begin the overhauls on the state-owned locomotives. In the midterm, or I'm sorry, I'm going to call this the second column here. I'm going to start calling it the short term. From 2026 to the end of this decade, 2030, we're going to focus on restoring that state of good repair by overhauling those old locomotives, beginning the component level overhauls on the Chargers, and then also completing some work we're doing, such as truck overhauls, which are basically improving the ride quality of the existing equipment by rebuilding the wheel assemblies. Then in the midterm, 2030 to 2040, we're going to focus on stabilizing performance through high-quality maintenance, which will include not just the technical aspects, but the budgeting aspects to make sure we have the resources needed to keep the equipment in a state of good repair. And as we bring equipment back into that condition, we can begin to enable selective service growth in that time frame as our equipment programs succeed. And we will also, in that time period, begin a next generation procurement for an entirely new fleet by 2040. And then in the long term, post 2040, it's ensuring that we have all the right pieces in place to continue to maintain that fleet of the future and not fall behind on the state of good repair, make sure that it is out there and that it has high availability into the time span of someone else's career. Next slide, please. So a quick deep dive into some of the current overhaul projects that we're working on. This, as I mentioned earlier, will help us buy the time that we need to begin that next generation procurement, getting these equipment, getting another 12 to 15 years of useful life out of this equipment buys us the time to bring in new equipment. The F-59 overhaul, we are very close to going out with invitations to bid to the industry to come in and work on those locomotives. In order to maintain service and to not pull too many locomotives out at any given time, that effort will take several years. We'll be pulling out 2 or 3 locomotives at a time, using new Caltrain locomotives to support the service, and continuing to ensure that our Charger locomotives are in service to protect it in that time frame. The second project is the bi-level coach modernization. As I mentioned, they're 25 to almost 30 years old now. They certainly are starting to wear at the edges, and you can see that when you ride our trains. So that effort will also happen in parallel, beginning with a pilot phase in next fiscal year, 26-27. And we hope that getting all of our equipment through that process will be done by 2032. And that work is really focused on enhancing passenger comfort and safety while aligning with current regulations. The image I have up here shows an early rendering of just a seating area and a window shade concept. We've had a lot of discussions about the window curtains and how people feel about that. So we've been working with some designers and some people who really know the regulations and the engineering of the vehicles. And the intent of this is to show what a moderate cost but a high impact approach could be. So targeted interior upgrades and overhaul, modernization rather than a full rebuild of the equipment. And that bi-level modernization effort, as I mentioned again, hopefully going from 2026 to 2032 will allow us to protect the ridership experience before that next equipment arrives. So in summary, this is a timeline showing how the fleet strategy comes together over the next 20 years. There are a lot of items on this Gantt chart, a lot to do. We are definitely in a crunch period, but executing this well with our partners and with the necessary funding to keep it all going will bring the next generation of equipment online on time and on spec. So I'll leave that slide up there for you all to try to squint at, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, I screwed around and lost my monitor. So are there any questions in the room? Board Member Rayburn.
Do we have public comments first?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Is that what meeting I'm at? Are there any public comments on this item?
We do currently have 2 members online that would wish to speak. The first is Roland. Roland, please go ahead.
Thank you, and absolutely great thanks to the staff for this presentation. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. We're definitely on the right track. But the one thing I would like to do today is take the opportunity to start having a discussion about level boarding. And this next generation is our opportunity to get there.
And you don't.
We need to have California standardizing behind Caltrain on their boarding height, which is 550 millimeters, which is the European TSI standard. That's the standard across the whole of Europe. We need to get it in the same place in California, and our next generation development is the opportunity. I can hear background noise, and it's not coming from me. The next generation development is our path to level boarding across the whole of California. Oh, and before I close off, we need to get California high-speed rail back down to the same level as everybody else. Just like the Russians did, by the way, they came down from high boarding heights to also 5 and 50 millimeters. Because if we don't, we're going to end up to have buildings, separate platforms, so high-speed rail and everything else in California. And now is a good time to stop that. Thank you.
And we do have one more public comment from Justin Penman. Justin?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. My question is for the Caltrans director. So I think this is great that we're going to be overhauling our existing equipment and whatnot. I think they're long overdue for some TLC. But if I'm looking at the presentations and also at the state rail plans, why do we have such a big focus on unproven hydrogen technology as our next generation fleet of the future versus purchasing existing diesel equipment that's already much cleaner than the equivalent amount of people driving their cars?
Thanks for your comment, and we'll hear that response at some point in time. Anyone else online?
That was the last public comment online and in person.
Thank you. We'll go with the directors in the room. Director Rayburn, did you have a comment?
Sure. I have a couple of comments. I really appreciate your presentation and being here in the room with us this morning. Looking at the Northern California component of the fleet, what we have right now, the 12 F-59s that are long in the tooth and need the upgrades. Back in 2021, I think we were even talking about retrofitting those to Tier 4. I suspect that's gone by the wayside, and I would like clarification on what the overhaul will result in if we get to Tier 4 for an interim period of time. I know that we expect to retire them by 2040, and so it would be useful to have improved emissions reduction. Could you just address that?
Sure. Yes, you're right. We were looking at ways to improve the emissions of those locomotives. The 13 F-59s that we still have in service, we originally had 25 or so. Those 13 that remain in service were upgraded they were born as Tier 0 locomotives. We upgraded them to Tier 2 around 2011 or 12, I believe. And we were looking at, could we upgrade them to Tier 3? There were physical constraints about getting to Tier 4. And then as we went through that process, we spent about 2 years looking at Tier 3. And that also became technically, but more importantly, cost prohibitive. But the intention now is to maintain them at a Tier 2, which is, if a new locomotive would have to be Tier 4, but a Tier 2 is still a significant improvement in NOx and SOx reduction from Tier 0. These locomotives are also capable and are running today on renewable diesel, which does knock down particulate matter significantly, but it was primarily a cost effectiveness. And we really tried to solve the technical issue on getting to Tier 3, but it was going to require a lot of trade-offs that we weren't capable of doing on that chassis.
Understood. And I suspect that we would achieve a greater reliability with, of course, the retrofit, and be able to jettison those F-40s which are Tier 0.
Yes, and that is the beauty of the F-59 locomotives. If you know anything about the technical aspect, maintainers love working on old EMD locomotives. You can rebuild them and run them forever. So I'm glad that they are Tier 2 locomotives and not Tier 0, because we are going to be working on a locomotive that could run forever, but with a technology that is not 2026 standards, but at least 2012 Tier 2.
Thank you. And one further, you mentioned the maintenance, and of course, we want a robust maintenance program. And what's your thoughts on how we could improve the joint use of the Oakland Maintenance Facility?
That's a fantastic question. As a reminder, we along with Capital Corridor and the San Joaquin's JPA, transitioned last year to a new third-party maintainer, and primarily doing much of the work out of San Joaquin's facility in Stockton. That was a tremendous lift, and thank you to Rob and the other partners to help us get through the legal proceedings. Took a year to get there. We knew there were going to be teething issues, but I think we're turning the corner and we're getting to a higher reliability as the equipment came over and into Herzog's or Tassie's maintenance authority. We are now getting higher availability on the coaches, and we are starting to see that with locomotives as well. But you mentioned OMF. That is a facility that the state partnered with Amtrak on to construct in the early 2000s, and we have a very strong investment interest in that property, and we are going to continue to work with Amtrak to find ways to make that a property that is still successful, not only for Amtrak's long-distance services, but for the state-supported services as well. We are going to get the full value out of the investment that we made 25 years ago.
That sounds good. And I'll just conclude with, I'm very excited to see the targeted bi-level upgrades, the window shades, the seats. I want to make certain that, of course, AC outlets and Wi-Fi are computer connections are available at each seat. Is that in the plan?
It's a dangerous debate to step into USB-A versus USB-C, but we're looking at how we can provide as many of the most modern electrical connections as possible. We've seen some mock-ups. We are certainly working on trying to provide a seat for everyone, a plug at every seat. For everyone. Those details will get worked out, but we've been spending a lot of time with Leo and his team working on those details.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for joining us here today in person.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Director Jane.
Thank you for presenting the milestones and the plan. My question is regarding the next generation procurement. You know, I know CARB originally had a mandate of zero emissions in 2023, which they rescinded in 2025. Where does that leave us in terms of trying to procure hydrogen or battery electric or catenary? What is your thoughts around that? And then, you know, you were saying the F-59s, we couldn't upgrade to Tier 3. Is there a possibility for us to sell those to, say, a state that is running on Tier 0 and then purchase, you know, Tier 4s? Is that a possibility for us to do? I know there was an issue of selling Caltrain vehicles to Peru, but can you sort of elaborate on that?
Yes, I'll start with that. There was legislation in the last year. I forgot the bill number, and I'm trying to. Sorry, I'm looking for a little help.
Senator Cortez's bill.
Yes or no?
Passed, we could technically sell them, but it would not provide enough revenue to actually.
Okay. Yes. So there was a threat that, or at a moment in time, that we wouldn't be able to sell older locomotives anywhere else. You know, under the theory that air moves around, and selling a lower tier locomotive even to another state would still result in degraded air quality. But that bill was relaxed, and so we could sell that locomotive. There is a market for locomotives in other states, but I think there's more value to the state to continue to keep those locomotives even at a Tier 2 operating in California for the foreseeable future. But that was something we did a lot of work with the legislature and bill analysis in the last year. It was a significant threat to the program, whether we would be able to sell them and monetize that or not. But we continue to work on all fronts in terms of technology, even after the CARB mandates were repealed. We still believe that you know, yes, to the point the commenter made earlier, locomotives and trains are far more efficient than private vehicles. But we do also think that just the state of the technologies across the market are continuing to advance, and we shouldn't just settle for diesel. We shouldn't just settle for Tier 4. So we're continuing to look at multiple approaches to get to near zero and eventually to zero emission in the train network in California. Catenary is obviously the gold standard solution. The state rail plan mentioned that by 2050 we have a vision of getting to over 1,000 miles of electrification. I'll point out though that was focused on publicly owned corridors, including the High Speed Rail Authority, the Brightline West project, and Caltrain. But we're also looking at opportunities to do island electrification, where you could perhaps create segments of 5 or 10 miles of catenary where it is technically feasible, and then use an electric battery locomotive that could charge under the wire. There's a study that I'm going to be joining the Energy Commission and the Air Resources Board to look at technologies like that going forward. CalSTA funded the Caltrain battery electric multiple unit to take one of their new electric trains and include a battery car that can now charge under the line on the peninsula and then run under battery power all the way to Gilroy and perhaps even further. So that's a major investment the state has made. And then the zero emission hydrogen trains that you mentioned, those are another project that we're using R&D funding for, and those trains will be arriving next year in Southern California. It'll take a few years to get them tested, and we're hoping to prove that technology will work. There are certainly issues on the hydrogen supply side, but we continue to have conversations with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, Energy Commission, CARB, and others, including the transit industry. I believe Samtrans in Santa Cruz have now invested in hydrogen, as well as AC Transit. And so there is still a very strong demand from the transit sector in California for green hydrogen production. And so we're continuing to not only follow that, but help support that, knowing that hydrogen availability is going to be probably a bigger issue than the technical capability of a hydrogen fuel cell train. But that's just one of the multiple pursuits that we're making to get to zero and lower emissions. And as we develop that zero emission train in Southern California, we look at what is happening with the Caltrain BEMU. We're taking the next few years to really see how is that technology shaking out. We know it won't be mature by 2030, but that's when we will begin the procurement of the next generation of equipment in California. And so we hope we'll have a lot of data points to take away from the next 4 or 5 years to help inform a wide RFP procurement of the next generation equipment, and that by 2030 we'll have some stronger insights into what the future beyond diesel looks like in California.
So you don't see any restrictions currently for us to buy new Tier 4 locomotives?
No, in fact, we are hoping to put in an application to the FRA's Christie program in the next week, where we are actually going to be asking for a few additional Tier 4 Siemens Charger locomotives. To replace the Caltrain locomotives with a 3 or 4 year production line. The Caltrain lease will be up in the early 2030s, and it would be nice to have some new Tier 4 chargers to replace them while we see what other technologies can pan out in the future.
Yeah, so while I'm all for, cleaner air and less carbon, I really want to shy away from unproven technologies. I still see that the battery electrics and the hydrogen are still a long ways for being proven out, and I don't want to be restricted for what we can purchase. And then I always beat this drum about I don't like customized, I want standardized vehicles that other agencies are using, in other states, other places, so that we can get spare parts, we can get second sourcing, we can get better pricing, all of that. I really don't like customized vehicles, yeah.
That's a great point. And a few of the initiatives that we're working on, we have hosted a rail fleet consortium, which gathered first the intercity and commuter operators in California beginning in 2020. We met quarterly during the pandemic to say, look, we have a lot of buying power in California. We have a large fleet across all our agencies. We need to be thinking about what the technologies of the future are and how we can combine our buying power and help try to move the market. We were quickly joined by other states in the West, and then Quebec joined our group as well. So we don't want to do it alone either. And so we're continuing to bring in as many of our partners from California and elsewhere as possible to say, again, what does the future technology look like? We've had diesel locomotives pulling coaches for 75 years in this country. Maybe that will continue to be the future, but if there's something else on the horizon, we want to look at it collectively and then hopefully be able to procure with others so that when we do it, we're doing it in large scale in a way that makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jane. Director Fracas. Lucas. Director Lucas.
That works. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks so much. Appreciate the presentation this morning. I think, especially highlighting the issue of some of the overhauls of the equipment and across the different intercity passenger rail systems across the state. I'm really just curious, what lessons has Caltrans taken away from this situation? How is the agency responding, as how it organizes staff and other resources? I mean, I think, it's clear that there's the need for the upgraded equipment is very, very important. And, we're starting to have some challenges, at least in the Capital Corridor due to the delay. So would be really curious about, what you all at Caltrans have sort of learned from this situation and how you're organizing staff and other various resources there. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. I think in the last 5 or 10 years, really, as the 2 new JPAs were created in California and the responsibilities for maintenance shifted, I think we were caught on our back heel. I think we're now working together very well with all the JPAs, and we realize, we need to be aware at all times of what it takes to keep the equipment running. So that's what this fleet strategy document was about, is to really lay out what are the moving parts, how do we stay on top of it. I think a few things we're going to hopefully begin to see some improvement in the maintenance with the new third-party provider in Northern California, begin to incorporate what we call life cycle program maintenance, LCPM, into the process so that it's less about major overhauls that need to be, that can sneak up on you and that have significant funding requirements. We're going to try to transition a lot more of the work into that periodic maintenance that is more easily budgeted for and doesn't take equipment out for such long periods of time. And just continue to work with the JPAs closely on planning the service to make sure that we have enough equipment available to protect that service while putting it through the maintenance and overhauls that are necessary.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate those responses. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Freerichs. Director Dickinson.
Thanks for the presentation. That's very helpful. The strategy certainly makes sense to me looking at it, but the completion of any strategy requires financing, and so I'm curious about that aspect of it. If you could describe for us the financing plan to go along with implementation and completion of the strategy, whether you've got what the mix of any federal money is that this is dependent upon, whether you've got a source of continuous appropriations from the state, or you need annual appropriations, and what the source of those might be for you to complete this strategy. That would be helpful to know, because keeping the equipment running, obviously, we all appreciate is crucial to maintaining the service. So can you elaborate a little bit on the financing aspect of it?
Yes, that's a great question. There's a lot of approaches, and each of the components, we have to tailor the financing approach to each of them. I'll start with the long term, the fleet procurement for the future. That's something that I mentioned will begin in 2030. That could be $1 billion program. And so that's something where we have not developed the details on yet, but we are looking at a lot of different potential financial models and ownership models that are in use not only around the world, but also in the US. But that's, again, a question for 2030, not for today. But how can we leverage state investment and perhaps put some of the financial risk onto other parties, and that's a conversation we'll get into in the years ahead. But in the immediate term, as for maintaining equipment, I mentioned shifting to a life cycle program maintenance that will allow us to do some of the more overhaul type work in the course of our regular business. We do have a funding source where we do need to go back every year to the Department of Finance, but it is an agreement we've had since the beginning of the program around the year 2000, where we can go in each year and make we have a baseline amount that we can request, and then we can make adjustments to that based on the maintenance needs of that upcoming year. And so we've had very positive conversations with finance over the last 2 cycles, and have explained how we want to continue to use that tool to expand the maintenance program right now. We also have a budget concept that's worked its way through Caltrans, that goes up from Caltrans and then over to the State Department of Finance, that is looking at helping to fund the bi-level overhaul project. We will also look at other grant opportunities along the way to fund the bi-level overhaul project. And then for the F-59 overhaul project, we have that funding. It's going to take 6 years to go through. We've identified funding within our existing resources to begin that process. So it's a lot of different approaches, a lot of year by year, but we're messaging to our funding partners the need to think about this as not a 1 year funding, but a 5 year or 6 year cycle where we will be coming back because the program is set up that way, and that the importance of having that funding year after year after year and showing what the outcome will be has been successful in getting us the initial 1 or 2 year funding so far.
Thanks. So it sounds like this is all dependent on state money for the immediate. I'm not thinking about the next generation at this point, but for the immediate, it's all dependent on state funding. Is that correct? And are you starting to see any pressure build as a result of the pressure overall on the state budget?
Yes, you're correct. The first 2 years are relying on state funding, although we are exploring a few grant opportunities, state and federal, that would apply to the next 2 years. Of course, there's pressure. I'm looking around the room at my transit partners. There is certainly mounting pressure and concerns about our primary source of funding, the PTA. And so we are going to need to balance our requests with requests from transit operators around the state as well. It's something that's in the front of our minds, but so far the conversations we've been having have been positive. I think it's always important for me to tell the story of the success of the California State Rail program. We are a model for the nation. The current federal arrangement under the PREA 209 process really derives from what we did in California in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so the success that we've created, getting to nearly 6 million riders a year before the pandemic, and not only 6 million riders, but 6 million riders taking very long trips, creating a very high number of miles avoided of personal vehicle travel. I think that's something that still resonates with the legislature, and that's something we'll continue to beat the drum about. And I would appreciate support from Capitol Corridor and the other JPA boards as well to help us deliver that message that rail is a very valuable product in California, and it's going to be a critical part of achieving our VMT and greenhouse gas reduction goals. And I think we can continue to do that and make that case.
Okay. Well, thank you for those responses. I infer from what you said, though, that there's going to be a necessity for all of us to keep an eye on that ball to make sure that there's sufficient funding to carry out the strategy that you've outlined, as well as maintain our service levels. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Director Dickinson. One last question. The states included Salinas, the Salinas extension, and required us to put it in the business plan for operations. But this board has long prioritized over 2 decades Roseville to Sacramento, and increasing, the number of trips from Roseville to Sacramento from 1 to 3 to eventually 10. How does the fleet plan support the board's priority on the third track?
We continue to work closely with all the JPAs on what are the fleet requirements for the service increments that we'll be delivering in the future. As a Sacramento resident, I would love to be able to take the train east to enjoy the recreational opportunities out in Auburn, and so I look forward to the Roseville project being developed as soon as possible. That is a very short, I don't want to speak for Rob, but it's a short additional segment, and when we look at the locomotive and consist needs to get an extra 15 or 20 miles out to Roseville, it doesn't put a lot of pressure on the overall fleet utilization. Salinas, we are looking at, we have an opportunity, we think, without a significant infrastructure investment to extend service to the Salinas market. So we did ask the Capital Corridor to take a look at that as a potential operation, with state funding, essentially extending a Capital Corridor train as perhaps a contract option. That's something where we also think one train a day, we'll have to look at the details as that advances, but it shouldn't put significant stress on fleet availability. But it does get back to all the state of good repair items that I mentioned earlier. We do need to make sure that we get the availability up and above where we are today. And I think that in 2, 3, or 4 years, when the Salinas project could be, or Salinas operation could be in service, we should have enough locomotives through the F-59 overhaul that we're up to a higher level of availability, and it wouldn't put much pressure onto the system at all.
And Bruce, maybe I could add to that answer a little bit, and just make a commitment to the board. You're asking a fair question, right? We've had a rough year. F-59s have not been reliable. They're past the midlife overhaul cycle. And we're running with 8 consists, not 9, right? We were running with 10 before COVID. We improved our operations to be able to run with 8, but we really need 9 consists to run that service with the right type of service. So we're being patient and we're working on it. And I'll just commit to you that we will come to the board and with a clear operating plan. And I think it's fair to for the board to ask the state to deliver its part of the deal before we extend that service to Salinas. So that is a board decision, and we will come back to the board. And I'm, as a staff, I will say that we are committed to pushing forward on the Sac-Roseville project, and we hear it loud and clear that that's a board priority, and we are going to continue to do that. But I do want to say, coming to you with details, because our business is all about details, and showing that our fleet is back to a reliable state, is able to support some sort of a change like that. That needs to happen before we do it.
Right. And as I often muse, when Ken and I left Placer County, the population between Roseville and Rockland was probably close to 200,000, but it might be 205 by now, right? I mean, a lot of migration east is happening and has been happening for decades in our area. All right. Yes, Director Jane.
Yeah, when I asked about zero emissions future and you talked about the consortium, one of the questions I have is, other countries, Europe and Asia, seem to be ahead of us in high-speed locomotives and zero emission. And of course, we have the Buy America rules. But, we had an example at VTA where we were trying to do off-catenary light rail. And we wanted to use a Kinki Shario car from Hudson Bergen. We couldn't bring it into California because CPUC rules make California different than other states. That seems to be a huge problem in terms of being able to use vehicles that are approved in other states and bring them into California. Do you have any comments on that?
On the intercity rail side, the Federal Railroad Administration really has the final say on what kind of equipment can run. A lot of the research and development that we're doing is entirely with state dollars as well, and so we have the ability to be flexible and work quickly without being able to prepare for Buy America requirements, but we can do projects with that state funding quickly and with technology and vendors that may not be Buy America compliant now. For example, the FLIRT hydrogen train that we're buying for Southern California is being produced in Utah by Stadler, which produced the Caltrain trains. They're developing a supply chain across the United States because the Caltrain equipment did need to be FTA Buy America compliant. So we will continue to work with manufacturers that want to get there, but we have the ability with the state funding to plant the seed and get the technology and the development going without limitations on supply chains that can get fixed later on in the process. And so we'll continue to work closely with the FRA. We do have quarterly meetings with them about all of our new technology that we're bringing to California. And so we're working through the permitting and certification process with them every step of the way.
But can you comment on California having separate rules from other states?
The PUC historically has been more focused on transit, on light rail, subway equipment in California. They do have some oversight and sort of regulatory role over railroad safety and a support function to the FRA. So we'll continue to work with the PUC as well. But I think right now, as we develop these new technologies, we'll just continue to work in advance with our partners, FRA, CPUC, and others, to get buy-in as we go along and before we get a train out there that doesn't get permission to run.
Well, like my colleagues, we appreciate you being here. Hope we can have you back or corner you somewhere and have an extended conversation. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to the next item. That's a capital project update.
All right. Rob Paget, Managing Director, Capital Corridor. So for our capital project spotlight today, just a reminder, we spotlight a project, but we also will take questions. So we take this as a single item. We'll take questions on any of the other capital projects that are in your packet. We are going to talk about Tap to Ride today. It's all good news in this update, I think. We officially turned on the ability to use your credit card without pre-registering last Friday, 24 hours in advance of FIFA. Nothing like a good deadline. And I want to really thank the team for getting this done, working with Amtrak, working with the federal agencies that had to be involved in that effort. It was a very big deal, and the devil's in the details, and we made that happen. And I was on the train on Saturday. I was down there for FIFA stuff. There were 3 folks on the train who had tried to use the app, couldn't buy a ticket. The conductor had not gotten the email on Friday, but was not aware. And I was able to send them over to the reader, and they paid, and they were blown away. So I know BART has seen an incredible upswing in taps with their program. We haven't really told anybody, but it's already happening. So I'm excited with that to bring back Stuart Bishop, who's now our project manager over this effort, and he is going to give us a quick update, and happy to take questions.
Good morning, Board of Directors. Stuart Bishop. I am the Business Systems Analyst for Capital Corridor, but as Rob mentioned, also a Project Manager for the Tap to Ride program. Today, I want to give you kind of a brief overview of Tap to Ride, where we are today, the issues and problems we've kind of faced over the program pilot, and our path towards 2027, which is the goal of us is to have a full open launch by that date. Next slide, please, me. Sorry, go back one. Sorry, apologies. As we know, Tap to Ride has its roots with CCJPA in the California Integrated Travel Project. This is the state's idea to get a standardized contactless fare payment system across the transit operations. The relationship gave us a great opportunity to work with multiple vendors and technical resources, which would have been relatively difficult for us to gain access to independently. We've also in that time worked with Zentrans, who some of you may be familiar with, who we work with on the Wi-Fi project, and they've given us a great operational support and insight into how the program has developed over the years and really driven us to how we can improve a program for everyone involved, including our ridership and conductors. Next slide, please. Thank you. As we know, running a pilot on the scale we have, we've had to learn during operation. We haven't had the opportunity to really develop into that. We've learned as we've gone along, and thankfully we kind of operate at a bit of a smaller scale to begin with as the first open loop launch. During that time, there are 3 really critical areas which I'd like to highlight on the slide right now, which is the revenue protection, the impact on conductors, and also the customer relations. Within the revenue protection, we've determined during our time that behaviors of passengers can really impact the Tap to Ride program in the sense that if they forget to tap off, they get a penalty charge, at which point we have to respond to and justify a refund for that individual. So we've been working towards building a fare adjustment tool with Zentrans, which will allow us to capture those proactively and give a much better customer service to our passengers on board. And that also feeds into our customer relations platform, which we are actively working to develop a complete CRM platform with Zoho, which will integrate with the fare adjustment tool and really support our operations with Tap to Ride and our communications with the riders on board. And lastly, the impact on conductors. During the program, we've had to provide a secondary device, which was an Android device, to go alongside their Apple-provided hardware from Amtrak. That created a burden which we couldn't avoid, which meant that the conductors had to carry 2 devices at all times and keep 2 devices charged at all times. So we are actively working towards an iOS app which will be integrated into the Amtrak hardware, allowing them to carry one singular device to cover all aspects of the role. Next slide, please, Megan. Thank you. Here we can see the technical roadmap. This is what we aim to deliver by 2027. The CRM expansion kickoff has begun, and a big turning point for this is FIFA. The idea being that FIFA is a huge event for all of us, as we know, for the country itself, and it gives us a real big look into the expansion of riders across the board. So we're looking towards the operational efficiency, which is the conductor device and the customer relationship program, revenue protection, as mentioned with fare adjustment tool, our network expansion, which is our leased vehicles, and the San Francisco bus connection, which we are working towards at this point in time, and accessibility, which is the big one Rob has mentioned, which is where we've gone open loop. This allows riders to tap and pay their way using both physical and also mobile devices, and also including your Apple Watch, if you so wish. We've tested it and we know it works. Again, FIFA is our catalyst. This is the point where we've been able to go open loop, and this is really giving us the opportunity to view how the system will run under heavy load. As mentioned, the visitors coming to the area using Capital Corridor, they are predominantly very familiar with an open loop program, especially from the areas of Europe. I myself am from England, and we have, contactless payments without registration is commonplace. So really, touching upon getting open loop in place has significantly increased the numbers we're seeing on Tap to Ride over the last few days. And as noted, our active work streams right now are really critical to make sure that we can hit that 2027 goal and have a solution in place which is not just stable, but also efficient for the riders on board. Thank you, Mimi. And last but not least, I'd like to show you our last 6 months in detail and really show you where Tap to Ride has gone. Over the last 6 months, as you can see, everything is increasing. Our revenue is increased, we're hitting over the 10,000 mark, our monthly tap-ins are increasing, and although I don't have the data presently on the screen, I can assure you that actually since Friday, we have seen every day has been the highest day for all tappers. We've been hitting over 100 people right now. Yesterday was significant for us. So we're continuing to see that growth, and we're really seeing the opportunities that people are actually taking the chance to tap onto our service as an easy, effective way to get on board and travel across the stations. You'll see, obviously, Davis and Sacramento continue to be our highest. That will predominantly be always the case. But we've also seen a significant increase in Richmond riders, that has grown over the last few days, and we suspect is also the links to BART. People being familiar with that contactless payment open loop and now being able to use our service. And I will take any questions as well.
Director Broadway, you asked me a question on the way down. Why don't you ask your question now?
The discussion we were having was in relationship to the continuation. So this is not just a pilot and now the expansion of that with FIFA. So yes, no?
Yeah, I guess officially it's still pilot. But we're moving on the project. So, I think getting a couple of things really mattered in my eyes. One was getting rid of the manifest requirement. So that was, and that happened last Friday. I think the second, and Stuart talked about it, is is really the ability to get these readers that Amtrak conductors use to scan, so they don't have to carry one phone. And we are there. Apple's approved it. We're testing it. Like, getting Apple approval was a big deal. So we're getting there on that too. And then the third is the back end support. So making sure that we're supportive on our side. We're small, right? So we have to make sure that we can support the customer service functions to deliver it. I'm most confident in that third one, and I'm actually pretty confident in the first two at this point. So. I'd say kind of still a pilot, but we're going to get to a point where we're going to just charge forward and make this happen.
Great. Well, thank you. And I really appreciated the memo that you sent. Excited to see that. And then you sharing with us the example of how you showed the availability of that. I think the easier we make it, the more we're going to see use and we'll see increased ridership.
Yeah, and for conductors, this is going to really make their jobs easier, because if you get on and you don't have a ticket, they are only able to, and it's a complicated issue, but they used to be able to take credit cards. They can only take cash now. It's a data compliance issue. So it's not easy for them to sell tickets on board. And this is a piece of cake. And for those who haven't used it, you should try it. It's pretty remarkable how much easier it is than even the Amtrak app, which is pretty good. This is a piece of cake. And I think at places like Richmond, where people fumble around and trying to figure out what to do, and now that all the local agencies and Sacramento agencies, several of which have gone open loop, that's just how it's going to be, right? So if you're not in the mix there, it's going to be a problem, and you're going to lose riders.
Thank you.
Director Rayburn.
Well, thank you so much. Removing this barrier for our passengers is a watershed mark. So I'm excited. We've seen it, Bart. We launched in December. By February, March, we were at over 15% of all trips on BART. We're tap and ride, tap to pay on the Capitol Corridor. I can just imagine the people getting out of the stadium last night, looking down at that train and thinking, "Oh, I wish I would have known that they had that train there, and we could have maybe gone online and bought a ticket." No, you could have just walked down the stairs and gotten on the train. A couple of questions that I have about where we're going with tap to ride. One change is that currently, if you go online and buy a ticket, you typically buy a round-trip ticket. There's one charge, one fee on your credit card. Have we considered aggregating or consolidating multiple transactions during one day so that our passengers aren't receiving double fees from their banks?
Just a clarification on your question. So I just want to make sure I understand it. So the question
Tapping
is,
on
yep,
and off, your total taps are 4 times a day.
Yep.
And so there's going to be a couple of bank charges coming through on those. Is there a way that we could...
could you have it as a single charge on your bank? Is that your
Right.
question? Okay.
Show that as a single charge, and it actually makes everything even easier. Perhaps when we go to my next question is, how do we set up the portal so that we can download the documents for an expense report?
So I'll answer in 2 parts. I'll take your second one obviously afterwards. So to answer your first question, in the current, and I'll be slightly technical, so I apologize here. In our current architecture, that's not possible. The readers themselves are sort of singular to the train. So where you tap on it, it's known within the train. We are working with our vendors to potentially develop a new back-end system which will incorporate all the readers within one kind of hive mind, is the way I like to say it. With that, we could potentially look at ways to more process transactions towards the end of the day rather than at one time. So that is an opportunity we could look into. And we could definitely take that on board as an opportunity for us with Little Pay to look at having a one kind of daily transaction for users instead of sort of singular ride transactions. And in response to your second question, that's where the customer relations platform is coming into the work. We're actively beginning the project now to begin building this customer portal, as we call it. And that will give riders not just an opportunity to see previous transactions, but also their trip history, be able to go and pull down those transactions through the portal to make sure that they can build their expense reports, but also just receive their receipts as and how they need.
And let me just be clear, regarding the conductor device, is that software in place now, or is that still coming?
So the application which has been developed by LittlePay for the iOS system for the EMD, so it's not yet in place on the conductor's devices. We're currently working with LittlePay to finalize that deployment. It is approved by Apple, and they have deployed it to other agencies only recently. That's first kind of deployments taken place. We currently have, once we've agreed with our vendor, it's a 6-week turnaround to have that installed and deployed on the iOS EMD system.
Well, Mr. Bishop, thank you for your service,
My
not
pleasure.
just to the Capitol Corridor, but to all 3 of the state-operated rail services.
Thank you very much.
Director Foley.
Thank you, Chair. First off, thank you. Literally, we did have a deadline and you made it, so that's wonderful. I guess I'd say goal or something like that. But I did had 2 clarifying questions. The first is, unlike the tap and ride here in the Bay Area, you do need to pre-register your specific payment device, if you will, a card. That's a requirement?
Not anymore. So that's the purpose of Open Loop. You don't need to register at all anymore. You can, with your mobile device, you can just tap on.
Got it.
As
Okay.
an
All
unregistered
right.
person.
Just wanted to double check, because I know the website still talks about, at least in the pilot, the pre-registration.
And your phone now, too. That also works. So if you have your credit card loaded on your phone, that will work.
Got it. Second question is, do we see any additional transaction charges for folks shifting to the tap and ride? Or is there any change in that sort of model?
For the rider, there isn't, and for ourselves currently there is not. If we moved within the iOS device to a ability to use Apple Pay, there would be additional charges for us, not for the riders.
So shifting to that model, we're going to have to start looking from a budget perspective about
Yes,
that
that's-
change.
Yeah, and that's something we're considering at the moment. as
As the program becomes more successful, we have to balance that. All right.
Exactly.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Director Jane.
I really like Tap to Ride. I was in the pilot. Is there a way to use one Tap to Ride for a family, for your kids and such? Could you have multiple passengers on Tap to Ride?
Not at the moment, no. It's something we can look into as we kind of develop a program and build up the architecture, but currently not at this moment.
Yeah, so VTA had to use token transit to be able to support that because Tap to Ride doesn't support multiples. And then one of the problems that I experience is when I tap on and I tap off, I kind of get the same message on the screen. And it doesn't tell you how much you got charged. It doesn't say, thank you for riding, have a good day. So I actually experienced this on Caltrain, where I got to the station, I got an error. So I tapped again, and it turns out it charged me the full fare for a 1-minute trip, you know? So it's good for the customers to see that you're starting and you're ending a trip so that you don't feel like you didn't tap properly or you didn't tap off properly. And so it would be better to improve those messages.
So I can actually answer that. The system we have in place gives us that capacity to create custom messages on the readers for when you tap, so we can actually present a new message to the passenger. It's not something we've tackled right now, but it's something we've got in place as part of our full launch.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And our district secretary reminded me that we need public comment there. Is there any public comment on this item yet?
There currently is no public comment.
Thanks. Rob, you want to take the second part of this?
All right, legislative, ready to go? Okay. All right, so your packet contains...
Is there anything other than...
Oh, that's it.
On the
We're
portfolio,
good.
okay.
For capital
Legislative then.
projects, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Padgett again. So I do want to highlight just a handful of things under the legislative side of things, the federal and state.
Sorry, Rob, before you do, because
Yes,
I want
sir.
to get this in right order, don't I? Is there any public comment on this item?
Maybe after the presentation, but there's currently no public comment.
All right.
See, in our city council meeting, we take public comment after staff reports.
Got it.
So I have to remember when I cross the Carquinez Bridge. All right, to change
The rules
my
change.
order.
The rules change, yeah. All right, so just a couple things to highlight. Some of you may have seen, we posted some pictures online. We welcomed the FRA administrator into town back in April. He was up in Sacramento. We gave him an overview of our projects and our service. It's always a good opportunity to share that story, especially if you get to do it in California and don't have to go all the way to DC to do that. I was also out in DC as a part of a fly-in with the States for Passenger Rail folks. That is all the states like us that sponsor services. There were 8 of us that did the rounds in DC, committee staff, kind of a matrix of committee staff and people who were there from various states. So we're continuing to do our work. Reauthorization is in the works. You probably have seen the House released a bill. The Senate has not at this point. Odds are we're not going to have a reauthorization by September 30th. But the House bill was developed. My understanding is it was developed in a bipartisan way. So it is a good roadmap of what we're likely to see, at least on the House side. So we will stay engaged in that, and we will continue to do our outreach to California officials and committee officials involved in that. On the state side, we've talked about Senate Bill 667 before. That has been amended and is no longer of concern. So we've withdrawn our letter of support, letter of opposition on that. Senate Bill 1136 is not moving forward. That was a very prescriptive act about events planning. Had a lot of issues with reality of how it could be implemented, so that's not moving forward this year. So feeling pretty good about both of those changes. 2 other things to mention, the UPS-NS merger. So we did file by the June 12th deadline that allows us to participate in that process with the STB. We are evaluating the application. Union Pacific did submit a revised application. The STB asked them for additional information on that as part of that application by July. So they're on the hook to do that. We're paying attention. We do have some folks who are doing some work for us just to evaluate it and see if there's any need for us to weigh in on that. And then lastly, there have been a lot of notices of funding opportunities out there in the rail world. I am aware that there are 5 applications along our corridor related to grade crossings, and thanks to my team for a lot of outreach and the support from the board to fund some technical support to communities. This is obviously a really critical issue for us, and we want to stay on top of it and really seize those opportunities, especially with some of these really challenging crossings. So we'll keep you posted and see how many of those result in funding from the feds. And that will wrap it up for me. Try to keep it short. There's more information in your packet, even on reauthorization. Happy to take any questions.
Is there any public comment on this item?
No, there's not.
No public comment. Any questions from directors? Thank you. Mr. Patchett, this is listed on our agenda as an action item. What action would you like us to
So we
take?
keep it as an action item in case there's a late breaking change that we need to take an action on. We do not have any requests for action today.
All right, there's plenty of action in your report, so we'll accept your report. Thank you.
Exactly.
What does that move us to? That moves us to board director reports.
Managing Director's report.
Oh, yeah, it does move us to that.
Number 5.
Number 5.
All right.
Back to you.
I'll try to keep it short, make up a little time here. So I'll highlight, if you can go to the next slide, please. Performance, ridership is going gangbusters. So Kyle, made the point that we are back to full service. We did that in December. Our customers heard us and are back on board. Up 23% year over year. Revenue's up 16%. Our OTP is not quite where I'd like it to be, where our team would like it to be. We'd like to be at about 90%. The challenges in this period are related to a handful of things, including track work and some PTC stuff, some of the aging equipment that we're now addressing, and then some of the mechanical bumps we've had with our new mechanical provider. And to say, and appreciated the question today, We are not in a place where we're managing OMF in a way that's collaborative with Amtrak. We're trying to get there. So we are working on that. Unfortunately, it does sometimes have some impacts to some of our mechanical issues. Next slide, please. So we're having a rough year on the trespasser front, not where we want to be. We are still doing all the things the board has endorsed. We still have the Union Pacific special agents. We still have the vegetation removal and fencing program. And then we have the $20 million grant from FRA that we are very, very close to getting done. And just going through hoops on that are very typical. So I fully expect, and we talked to the FRA administrator when he was out here, and I wanted to thank our chair, Mr. Howdeschild, for joining us for that visit. But we are going to stay focused on this issue moving forward. Next slide. FIFA. So knock on wood, we're feeling good about FIFA. So Saturday, several of us were out there and we tried to get the right train. I tried to get the busiest train, but it turned out people wanted to leave at 6 in the morning from Sacramento and spend the day there. So our early train was the busy train, interestingly, on Saturday. We carried, I think it was our second busiest day since COVID on Saturday, which is pretty nuts. And I don't know if yesterday beat it, but it was close if it didn't. Did it beat it? Oh, I'm sorry. So Saturday was 3, Tuesday was 2. So maybe we'll get 1 before we're done. And just hats off to everybody for delivering this service. And we did have a trespasser incident during the middle of the day on Saturday, which you probably didn't hear about because the folks on the ground were amazing and delivered that service, and we got everybody home. So we're feeling really good about it. We are serving every event. Last night, I got reports that we were back in Sacramento, spot on time at 2:45 in the morning, if you were on the train. So really want to, again, thank everybody who was involved in that, and to my team who is on call and paying attention to make sure that we're moving. But we always like a little fun at these meetings. So I'm going to queue up a video, and I want to credit Anne Marie Wong on our team, who is you might follow her on social media because she's a big transit person out there, and she joined us fairly recently. She was previously a Climate Corps intern and recently joined our staff full time and pulled this video together. And she got a few actors involved from our team, so you can see if you can spot any of them in the video. So I was giving them a lot of time to queue up the video. So hopefully they're ready to go back there in the back room. All right, I hope you're coming. Hope that convinced you to ride the train. And Kate on our team, I'm going to share a comment she made to me. She said her parents never thought those soccer lessons were going to pay off, but they did. And then last slide on this topic is we are out there with all languages represented. And excited to do that. And I will say, Leo did an interview with Univision in Sacramento. We haven't found it online yet, have we? Did we find it? Not yet. Okay, we're looking. So he did an interview at the station Saturday in Spanish. So appreciate that. And we're doing our best to reach out. And really, a lot of details here matter. The wayfinding signings, if you've seen them, and some of the paid media. So we're feeling pretty good partway through the event. And then my last slide, we're trying to convince more and more people to get into the rail business, and we've had a lot of luck. We have 3 people on our team who are Climate Corps, who were formerly Climate Corps interns, and we're always welcoming a new crowd every year. And we want to say we fully embraced AI on our team. We have our new intern Adam, so excited to welcome him to our team. All right, thanks. That wraps it up for us. Wraps it up for Managing Director's report.
Yeah, thank you very much, and welcome AI, Adam. All right, I think that brings us to Director's reports.
And there's no public comment on the managing director's report.
Is there no public comment? There
no
is public comment.
There's no public comment.
No public comment, all right. You know what? So we're going to do an auction. You know, you've been to an auction, you have to raise a paddle. I'm going to give you a paddle, and you're going to say, it's going to, one side's going to say public comment, the other guy's going to say no public comment. And then, yeah. Director Rayburn, save me from this.
Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge that California has a California Rail Pass. It's a 7-day pass, 150 or something per person, and go anywhere within the state. And I note that going north, it says you can get to Dunsmuir. Well, you can get to Dunsmuir on a train that arrives in the middle of the night. Otherwise, and Mr. Gradinger, I want to share that my goal is to get in this July beyond Dunsmuir. And I'm having to kind of piece together a trip using the throughway buses up to Reading, and then I have somebody else picking me up. But throughway bus is an interim way that we can serve populations, whether they're living in these more rural areas or for urbanites to head out and recreate. And so we get that interim access through the throughway bus service. My fingers are crossed that we have a robust service to Reading this July. I have a ticket, sort of. They're telling me that there's a new service coming soon. But just this morning, we approved an additional throughway bus service up to South Lake Tahoe. And that's tremendous. And we need to use that model and repeat for many of those areas that we want to expand rail service into and get that interim access built into the pie early on. Thank you. That's all I have.
Others? Going once, going twice? Oh, Director Jane.
So I'm a council member in the city of Santa Clara, which is home to Levi's Stadium. And so we've been hosting the Super Bowl and now the World Cup games. And the ridership has broken all records for public transit, for VTA, and for BART. And so I see this as a great opportunity to introduce people to transit. People that don't usually use transit will use these forms of public transit, and we've been able to move record numbers of people. So kudos to all the transit agencies.
All right, look at this innovative staff. Is there any public comment, District Secretary Franklin?
There's no public comment.
All right, thank you. With that, we will adjourn to my favorite location for the CCJPA, Suisun City. And why is that? Because there's an It's outlet right there in Suisun City. So we'll see you all on September 16th at 10 a.m.